In the early 1900s, racial segregation meant Black Americans were legally excluded from white-owned banks, shops, and neighborhoods. In Tulsa, the community responded by building an entirely self-contained world. The brick-and-mortar evidence of this effort was the Greenwood District. By 1921, it housed over 190 businesses, ranging from luxury hotels and movie theaters to private law firms and a modern hospital. This level of concentrated commercial success led Booker T. Washington to give the area its lasting title, Black Wall Street. By every economic metric, Greenwood was a thriving anomaly, a place where a dollar circulated 19 times within the community before leaving. For some white residents in Tulsa, that financial independence was viewed as a direct challenge to the racial hierarchy of the time. On May 31st, 1931, that entire system was dismantled. The physical destruction of the community took less than 24 hours. Over 35 city blocks were destroyed, thousands were left homeless, and an estimated 75 to 300 residents were killed, many of them buried in mass graves that were never marked. Then, the event itself began to disappear. For nearly 80 years, the massacre was scrubbed from public record and excluded from Oklahoma history textbooks.
How do you dismantle a thriving American city in a single day and then manage to convince the rest of the country it never happened? The violence began on May 30th after an encounter in a downtown elevator between 19-year-old Dick Rowland and 17-year-old Sarah Page. The details were never confirmed. An inflammatory newspaper article the next day implied an assault had occurred. Rowland was taken into custody and an armed white mob gathered outside the courthouse. A group of Black World War I veterans arrived to protect Rowland and prevent a lynching. In the resulting standoff, a shot was fired, and the city descended into chaos.
Local authorities actively deputized and armed hundreds of white citizens, directing them to get a gun and go, with the weight of the state behind them. Private airplanes flew over the district, dropping turpentine balls and firebombs onto rooftops while firing down on people in the streets. It remains one of the only times in history that American civilians have been attacked from the air on U.S. soil. In the aftermath, thousands of Black survivors were rounded up and held in internment-style detention camps across the city, some for several days.
This was a coordinated, heavily armed dismantling of an economic rival. The financial recovery was blocked by a bureaucratic wall. Insurance companies systematically denied claims from Black business owners, citing riot exclusion clauses to avoid paying for the damage. Simultaneously, official reports from the National Guard and police went missing, and local leaders enforced a strict code of silence. The suppression was so complete that generations grew up and lived in Tulsa without ever knowing an atrocity had occurred only blocks from their homes. It took 80 years for the state of Oklahoma to finally create a commission in 1997 to officially investigate what had taken place. Since 2020, researchers have used ground-penetrating radar to locate unmarked mass graves, turning the search for victims into an active forensic investigation. The burden of memory was carried almost entirely by survivors, a few of whom lived past 100 to testify before Congress and continue to fight for legal reparations. While a small section of Greenwood was rebuilt through community resilience, the immense prosperity of the original district never returned. A memorial still stands on the site where an economy once flourished. Buildings can be burned and records can be hidden, but the truth eventually finds its way back to the surface.